Morning, good day, good evening. Thanks for joining the Nexenta and ZeroStack webcast on Cloud Meets Software-Defined Storage. This is Steve Garrison, your MC for today's webcast. We've got two exciting and very knowledgeable speakers about to embark on a journey to help you understand three things. One, what's going on in cloud that we think is important for you to know. Two, what's going on with software-defined storage. And three, how do these two segments and these two vendors work together to bring more value to you? Let's go to the next slide where we're going to introduce our two speakers. First, we have Mike from Nexenta. Mike, why don't you take the microphone and tell us a little bit about yourself and Nexenta so our audience has better background on you and the company.
Sure, thanks. I'm glad everybody was able to join today. My name is Mike Letchin. I'm the field CTO for Nexenta. Nexenta, for those of you who aren't overly familiar with us, was really the inventor and is the leader for software-defined storage around the globe. We've been around since 2008, based out of Northern California in Silicon Valley, but producing both a scale-up as well as a scale-out storage solution for the enterprise as well as into cloud solutions. And I think that's where a lot of this ties in. With that, we do have deployments around the globe. Being around since 2008, we've obviously had quite a few with almost 2 exabytes under management at this point. All that built on partnerships with some of the leading platform vendors out there, whether that's with Dell, Cisco, Lenovo, Ericsson, Supermicro, IBM, name all across the board. If there's a major vendor, we're probably working with them. And building that on top of some core open source options, but really with some true patented IP on top of that to make sure that you're able to get the best flexibility, freedom, and a storage solution that fits your needs as the end user, whether it is in the enterprise or building out the latest and greatest in cloud applications.
That's great, Mike. Thanks for that overview. Let's change gears and give the microphone to our second great speaker, Kamesh from ZeroStack. Kamesh, tell us about ZeroStack and yourself.
Thanks, Steve. Hi, everyone. Kamesh Pemaraju. I'm the VP of Product Management here at ZeroStack. ZeroStack is a startup based in Silicon Valley. We are headquartered in Mountain View, founded by a couple of folks from VMware and a number of other technology vendors in the space. We are backed by Foundation Capital, Formation 8, and Leslie Ventures. We are an up-and-coming, innovative new company that are building what we call a self-driving cloud for developers. So the idea is public cloud convenience with private cloud control, and we will talk a lot more about this for the rest of the webinar. We are expanding around the globe. We are seeing a lot of interest outside of the US as well. So we have a European office in Amsterdam. We have an office in Singapore, and we're also expanding here in the US as well. So look forward to having this discussion. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks so much, Kamesh. And let's go to the next slide for this. And just one more reminder that if you have a question for any of the speakers, submit that via the chat tool or the question tool, and we'll route that through and make sure your voice gets heard. Mike, back to you.
Yeah, I think as we start digging into things today with, as Kamesh and I go back and forth a bit, to kind of set the stage, I think one of the things that is key to look at is really what does today's data center look like? What are we trying to get at? Where does it all build from? And a lot of it started with the very traditional. You look at kind of the center of the circle and you've got your compute, your storage, your networking. Add that into your power and cooling you need to really build out today's data center. But now as you expand out, there's so many more pieces of that. And we're starting to see, obviously virtualization has taken over most of the data center today, building out into easier solutions with converged and hyper-converged solutions, whether it's on all flash or now even going to container side of things. And all of these things kind of go full circle to be really managed by software. It's no longer that we're worried about the specific hardware. A lot of that has become commoditized along the way. And as we build out, it's not that much different which vertical or which horizontal you're in and you're dealing with it. That data center, whether you're building out things for new social platforms, whether you're the latest Android or iOS developer, or the guys that are trying to figure out how do I put different nodes in cars, that all comes back to building out what's in today's data center. And the cloud is just one huge portion of that we're able to see an evolution of what the cloud looks like. And as I think when we look at what the evolution of the cloud today, that it's not just that central spot on it, but I think, Kamesh, I know you've gone through with ZeroStack quite a bit on kind of where the evolution is. Do you want to talk through that for a moment?
Absolutely. I think the trends that Mike is pointing out are playing out today. I mean, all of us are on mobile phones. We use social all the time. So we're all familiar with it in the consumer world, in our homes and with our kids. But when we look at what's happening on the enterprise side, I mean, obviously the evolution started off with physical servers and the IBM mainframes of the old legacy world, and going into mini computers and desktops and servers and so on. It was all focused on the physical, right? The physical server and applications that would run on that one server. And obviously they were monolithic applications. They were written in old school languages. That worked as long as there wasn't, you don't have to deal with scale and distributed systems and more complicated applications. So, along came virtualization. VMware pioneered virtualization, and that helped people consolidate their server architectures, put more and more applications in a virtual infrastructure, but it's still focused on a single server, right, or small set of servers, which was fine until the 90s when the web took off. And that's when people started realizing that, it's not enough to just focus on, one server or 10 servers. All of a sudden you're dealing with, large scale, hundreds and hundreds of servers. And that's when we started seeing things like infrastructure as a service, web backends and stateless applications and things of that nature. So as you see the evolution, the more scalability you need, the more you need to move towards software, as Mike was pointing out earlier. It's no longer possible to deal with individual physical boxes anymore, because you need that scale, you need that agility, you need the ability to scale up and scale down. So everything is now moving to software, with infrastructure as a service. And now we're seeing the emergence of containers and even serverless. So if you look at where the world is going, it's moving towards this cloud-native applications, which is what enables the trends that Mike was talking about earlier. Whether it's mobile, social, big data analytics, and people are starting to look at serverless, where as a developer, I don't really care about infrastructure. I need to be able to run my functions anywhere, any place, and be able to scale up and down as I need to. And that's kind of where the evolution is going. So if you go deeper into the infrastructure, next slide, if you look at the next slide, Steve, so we're starting to see another trend, which is all around converged. And the reason why converged is taking off is essentially simplicity, right? So the hardware costs are going down. People don't want to deal with silos, right? So people are dealing with security, with storage, and with servers and with networking, and all of these in very large organizations tend to be very siloed, right? Different groups, different people. There isn't much in the form of automation between these, and it's very hard to integrate them, different APIs from different vendors. So converged is sort of become very, very popular, because now in a single commodity server, you're basically getting storage, network, and compute right in a single box. Now, once that happens, now the intelligence moves into the software and into the operations, right? So that's where the current trend is happening. So cloud, in a way, if you think about it, it's all software driven, whether it's software driven storage, software driven networking, or even software driven operations. That's where the cloud is, and you need the converged infrastructure that is able to scale out as the demands grow, as a way of managing the costs, managing the agility, and managing the operations. So let's kind of switch to what ZeroStack does real quick, to give you an idea of how ZeroStack is solving this issue and using converged infrastructure. So on this slide, you see basically two parts to the solution. First of all, this webinar is about how cloud and software-defined storage come together. Nexenta are the leaders in software-defined storage, and ZeroStack is defining a new way of deploying on-premise clouds. And you see here two parts. There's a part where you see servers at the bottom, the green boxes, And those are essentially commodity servers, Dell, HP, Lenovo, Cisco, you name them, bring your own hardware. And what ZeroStack does is takes those servers and essentially converts it into a ZeroStack cloud operating system. And that cloud operating system is inherently resilient, it's self-healing, it scales out, and it does all of that without the intervention of the user. So no need for expensive IT admins or cloud architects. The software takes care of all of the capabilities that are needed in order to run a cloud on-prem. Now, what you see on the top, what we call the Z-Brain, is an innovation that specifically ZeroStack has brought to the market. It's a SaaS portal. It's run from a tier 1 secure data center that ZeroStack runs. And this is the intelligence. We call it the Z-Brain because that's where all the activity happens in terms of managing the cloud, operating the cloud. We have innovated using machine learning and AI technologies. We have a Hadoop cluster and a Spark cluster running there for predictive analytics. So you could do things like, tell me how much storage I'm gonna run out of storage in the next 3 days is something that our system can tell you. So you can do intelligent resource management of your cloud. And all of that comes in the SaaS portal. The beauty of the SaaS portal is that we, ZeroStack, can continuously innovate and update new features to our customers. In fact, Z-Brain portal gets updated every 3 weeks. Just if you're familiar with Salesforce or Workday or any of these SaaS products, you get new innovative features, very often. You don't have to deal with it. And that's really what the Z-Brain is all about. So in a nutshell, ZeroStack provides a complete turnkey on-prem private cloud that is controlled and managed and operated through a Z-Brain. And with Nexenta, we have done seamless integration. So effectively, if you have a Nexenta solution in your data center, all you have to do is hook that up to the network that the ZeroStack cloud is running on, and automatically it shows up in our portal. And now you can start consuming the Nexenta volumes and data that's in there. We'll go into more details about this. So let's switch gears and kind of take a look at the Nexenta portion of this, what the solutions are and what we're integrating with, and we'll take it from there. Steve, next slide.
Yeah, I think as you talk about kind of the sexy part of it, the automation, the front end driver, all of that has to have that core solid base behind it. And that's really why Nexenta has partnered with companies like ZeroStack to be able to give that good front end, something that people want to be able to manage and the part they really want to work with. But at the same point, we want to make sure they get a good core base. With that integration is initially with our NexentaStor solution. So this is our flagship product. On it, it's been our core product since we came out in 2008, giving you truly unified file and block storage, whether it's over a 10 or a 40 gig and you're looking at NFS and SMB type storage, or whether you want to do block with Fiber Channel or iSCSI. We're going to give you all of the true enterprise feature set that you expect for a storage solution. So while we list a bunch of different features here, whether it's on the protection with different RAID levels or having snapshots and clones, things that at this point are table stakes for a good solid enterprise storage solution. What makes us different on that is the ability to deploy onto those industry standard hardware. So very similar to where those green servers in the previous slide were able to just kind of build out your cloud OS, that same commodity level of storage is what you're going to utilize commodity servers to utilize to build out that next level of cloud solutions. With that, there are some things that even set it apart even a little more, whether it be having a better replication methodology and really doing some real good high performance replication between different sites. Obviously, if it's a cloud provider looking to do DR purposes, things like that, you need to make sure that data is good. How we integrate in, whether having that tight tie with ZeroStack, so you see it right away, allows us to have a single solution across there, but also things on the back end, like being able to do a QoS level, so you can limit between different tenants and avoid that noisy tenant in the back end of your cloud. So if I'm presenting out on NFS, I can make sure that one user isn't impacting the rest of my users. Those things really do add up, but kind of the core of the system tends to be where we do a lot with our data integrity as well. While many of the cloud solutions out there today, it's kind of, you put it out there, if the cloud goes down, well, you're kind of just up the creek without a paddle, for lack of a better way to put it. You're just hoping you get your data. Really what we wanted to make sure was, as we built our storage solution, it gives you checksumming above and below, is again, similar to the ZeroStack where it's self-healing. Ours does that at the storage layer. So if you start to have failures, we'll actually self-heal the file system to make sure that you're getting the data you want when you want it at that time. So I think when you look at being able to have a good core infrastructure on the back end, a solid storage platform, you add in the ZeroStack management on top of it with ZBrain, that's where you start seeing where that hybrid cloud solution comes into play. So what's your thought on how we build out this hybrid cloud nowadays?
So interesting question there. You brought up hybrid, and this is a hot buzzword these days. I would much rather use the term multi-cloud rather than hybrid. Hybrid has different connotations, but most customers we talk to are using many clouds. They're using public clouds, they're using VMware, they're using Microsoft, and has been true in the data center for many, many years, and that's true going forward as well. So the idea is, in order to be able to take advantage of all of those clouds, you need connectors and integrations, and that's exactly what ZeroStack has done. So in this slide, you see connectivity to the public cloud. We have connectors to AWS and Microsoft Azure coming soon, which allows you to migrate existing workloads from a public cloud or export your ZeroStack workloads back into the public cloud. So that gives you that seamless back and forth and doesn't lock you into any particular vendor on the public cloud side. And on the on-prem side, VMware is pretty prevalent out there. 80% of enterprises use VMware, but they may want to move some workloads off of VMware just to reduce the license costs or move to a more modern platform or a more cloud platform. And we have built connectors there as well. So you can move workloads from VMware or even Hyper-V workloads you might have in your data center onto ZeroStack. And that gives you a true, what I call multi-cloud solution, right? And with Nexenta in the picture, with all the enterprise features that Mike was talking about earlier, with dedupe, compression, and multi-site capabilities, you get a true multi-site, multi-cloud solution. So if you switch to the next slide, one of the key advantages of doing this is you get an enterprise cloud right off the bat. You can get disaster recovery, and by the way, ZeroStack is also built with multi-site in mind from the ground up. So you could have the green boxes I referred to earlier in one of the slides. Those boxes can sit in multiple different locations around the world, right? You could have a mini data center in New York, San Francisco, London, Singapore, what have you. And all of that is managed centrally through our ZBrain SaaS portal. Now with Nexenta in the picture, you could have Nexenta sitting in New York, another Nexenta sitting in London, and using their capabilities in terms of the replication on the back end and all of that. Now all of a sudden you get a very enterprise grade remote replication and disaster recovery, and of course multi-site capabilities. And all of this orchestration of the control plane and management of the resources and management of workloads, moving them back and forth from either VMware or a public cloud is all handled by ZeroStack SaaS portal. So you get this best of both the worlds. You get the best of the public cloud world, you get the enterprise features you need on the on-prem side, and you also get multi-site capabilities. So with that, let's go and kind of take a look at the overall picture with NexentaStor and ZeroStack. So Mike, why don't you walk through some of the best things that customers will get when they combine the NexentaStor with ZeroStack. Let's move to the next slide.
So sure, I think one of the things, as you point out on the DR side of here, I know that Steve, as we've been going back and forth, I know there have been some things that have been coming up though. So before I jump into kind of how we separate, what are you seeing as you're hearing people on the webinar right now?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And I think it's a good place to stop and take a breath. You got great overview, by the way, guys. I feel like people have a better understanding of the synergy and why we're doing this. And the next half of the webcast is going to go into the details of the features and the solutions where they should be applied. But before we do that, I think a lot of IT people I talk to always want to know, when it's a two-box solution or two-vendor solution, how did you guys actually do the integration? Was it proprietary APIs, or are you using open APIs? I think just giving people a little bit of color on that, pull back that curtain a little bit so they understand what kind of testing it was done, and again, what were the hooks that make this really easy for them to embrace?
Yeah, sure. Let me take that one. So one of the things that ZeroStack has inside, like from an architectural standpoint, we do leverage some components from the OpenStack ecosystem. For those of you who are not familiar with OpenStack, it's the largest open source cloud operating system and services that are built by a very large community of developers around the world. It has the backing of some of the biggest companies on the planet. So what we've done is we've leveraged some key components of OpenStack, such as the compute controller called Nova. There's a storage controller, storage service called Cinder. So we are leveraging those key services. Of course, there's a lot of IP around it, as I mentioned, multi-site and SaaS management and all of that, analytics, which ZeroStack has built. But the core services is what gives us that open capabilities that Steve is talking about, right? So it's easy for us to take a Cinder API and make that, expose that to our customers on the front end. And also on the back end, Cinder has standard interfaces that allows us to integrate with Nexenta, right? So Nexenta has Cinder drivers, which we integrate with, and that gives us that seamless access to the back-end storage system. And I'll let Mike speak to some of the work they've done in the OpenStack space to make this easier for us to integrate with. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I think obviously that integration on the open platforms is something that's been key for us for a while, coming from an open source heritage as well as a company. Our integration with being able to have a Cinder driver, and we've had an upstream Cinder driver since 2012. So that's been running for quite a while now. And then even taking that and making sure that it really fits into the environment. With some of the largest clouds around the globe are utilizing either the Cinder drivers or Manila if you're doing file side of things. So a lot of that integration point, but there's also the key that we've built our system to make sure there are the open APIs. And we want to be able to make sure there's an API that people can actually manage things with, regardless of whether they want to use our console or your console or something that they're doing on their own for a side project they're working on, or someone else. Having those APIs that they can really work with is key. And I think that's where we've got a lot of the integration. And when I look at the slide we have up right now, all the different components that really make up what the enterprise cloud is going to look like, what is needed, whether you're obviously, when we looked at that circle in the very beginning on what today's data center looks like, we needed the compute and the networking and that side of things, and the management, the administration on it for the automation. That's the side that really is coming from the ZeroStack integration. And then you look at what do you want for that storage and that core for the back end, the replication across, whether you want the resiliency on snapshots and clones. Being able to choose what you want, whether it's a performance-driven cloud, whether it's a just capacity or a combination of those, is something that we can provide. So whether it is an all-flash environment that you really want to have high-performance workloads, or you're looking at an archival type cloud that maybe there's some regulatory things that need to keep it there. That's where you can look at a larger chunk of data that's sitting there, but still tie that across with a single front end, whether it's that integration that you need, both from our side as well as ZeroStack, for whether it's integration with AD and LDAP, or obviously making sure the workloads can spread, as you said, across multi-site. So if we've got replication between multiple sites, whether we've got just the management that needs to be in multi, that's there. And we built that a lot around initially with our integration with NexentaStor. The nice thing is we've gone into even utilizing some of our other platforms. So Nexenta as a company, like I said, started with NexentaStor, but has really developed a larger SDS portfolio, with the next component of it being our NexentaEdge. And this is where we went from having that scale-up solution with NexentaStor, getting you into the 5-6 petabyte range, out to a scale-out that's similar to adding more nodes into ZeroStack. You add more nodes and you scale out, scale out, scale out, and keep adding storage into it. Edge gives us a block file and object solution to provide the storage also with those same Cinder drivers we spoke of, to be able to give you up into the hundreds of petabytes for some of the largest clouds to be able to have a front end integrating in with that. With that, we use some of that knowledge we have. I talked about the data integrity a bit with NexentaStor. Now, NexentaEdge is not the same file system. It's not the core backend that we had there, but it is a patented cloud copy on write solution. So you get the enterprise data integrity, the snapshots, the clones that you want, but you combine that into a true cloud style environment, giving you deduplication and compression across that entire cluster. So really keeping your costs down again for your storage, as well as having the quick erasure encoding that we've produced that allows you to not have a performance penalty that you get from a lot of the erasure encoding for scale out solutions today, and keeping your data where it needs to be, easiest to access and quickly. Really, this is targeted truly towards that cloud style environment and some of the integration points with Cinder that we have with ZeroStack. But I think some of the confusion that comes into play and some of the concern for many customers, many users is, okay, well, when I'm looking at software defined, this must be difficult. It must be a lot for me to manage. And that's where we've taken a lot of time utilizing those APIs to build out true simplicity into SDS. Being able to have a self-documenting API that, as even when ZeroStack is looking at integrating, they're able to literally look at our system and say, oh, what is that command I need in the API to be able to translate that down? The end user has the same capability. If you want to look at the actual storage rates, see high-end analytics, advanced analytics on what's going on with your solution, it's all built into a very easy user interface with those integrations into things like ZeroStack. Now, obviously, you've got NexentaStor. I talked about some of the combinations there, but you've also got a solution that you could utilize NexentaEdge now with ZeroStack. Again, because we have those open APIs, that freedom to do what needs to be done from the storage backend for someone doing cloud automation. Now you've got a true auto scale out solution with ZeroStack and Nexenta combined. The networking coming in, and actually, maybe do you want to touch on a bit on how you do kind of a little more on the workload orchestration and the SDN side of things?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, the interesting thing is we mentioned earlier with NexentaStor and ZeroStack, that's a great platform for running your traditional enterprise workloads, right? You need, disaster recovery, you need high SLA, you need VMHA, all the things you're used to in the data center with traditional vendors like VMware or Microsoft. You get that with that combination. Now we're talking more about the new age apps, the next gen apps. We're talking about social apps, mobile apps, big data analytics, and this is and multi-tenancy and tenant isolation, and you have these workloads that your developers are working on. Maybe they're working on different projects, they need different tenants, and that's where if you go to I think we're looking at the slide right now. So things like software-defined networking becomes extremely important because you can now create isolated tenants and then have firewalling between those tenants, as well as firewalling between applications, and do that all through the software-driven interface. So in ZeroStack, you can create virtual machines or containers, and in fact, the support for containers becomes extremely important when you're talking about next-gen apps. As we talked about earlier, the evolution is moving towards containers, towards serverless, so having those capabilities built into the platform is key. And if you don't have an SDN underlying this, and containers, as some of you may know, are microservices, right? So they're little applications that are running at different places, potentially across multiple data centers, across multiple geographies, and all of a sudden, networking becomes extremely important. Now, and it's all dynamic, right? These services are not supposed to be isolated to or just running in one location on a single server somewhere. They can move dynamically, and that's where your network has to go with it, and your security has to go with it. And software-defined networking becomes kind of the key for all of that. And workload orchestration is kind of the next step there. So if you have multiple workloads running in different locations, you want to plumb them up. You want to be able to deploy new applications rapidly. And we have this notion of an app store within ZeroStack. We have today close to 30 plus DevOps tools that are already built in, things like Ansible, Puppet, Chef, and CI/CD tooling, Jenkins, GitLab, Kubernetes, all of these things that modern developers need to build next-gen apps are already built in. All you need is to select one of those. They are template-based, they're blueprints. You import them into a project, and given the appropriate configuration parameters, and click a button, and the whole thing gets deployed. These are complex, multi-tier distributed applications with lots of dependencies. If you were to do it manually, something like Kubernetes, trust me, I've done this manually before. It takes weeks to get it all right, especially getting the networking right. The networking typically is the biggest problem in any deployment that I've been at. And SDN and the automated deployment automates all of that, isolates the resources within different tenants, and all of that is managed using the ZeroStack orchestration engine. And of course, you have Nexenta on the back end, which kind of makes when the integration is seamless like this, imagine it's kind of scaling out to multiple sites. So that becomes a bigger problem when you have to do it manually. So, and again, I think, Mike, you guys have your own portal too to manage NexentaEdge and scale out and all of that stuff. And we can do more integration. The scale out is, for example, if you want to scale out, you could do it automatically. So when the system is running out of resources, we generate alerts today based on CPU utilization or storage utilization, and that trigger could drive a workload to go deploy more resources, whether it's on the storage side or the compute side. And as we said earlier, if you use APIs and you're kind of automating your workload orchestration through APIs, open APIs, in this case OpenStack, Cinder or Nova or what have you, you can orchestrate the whole thing, including scale out, which gives you a very powerful, what we call infrastructure as code capabilities right out of the box.
Yeah, and I think with that, one of the things that's key, you mentioned quite a bit on the containers. NexentaEdge, being that next-gen platform, also is really built all around containers as well. So while you guys are managing them, I mean, we do have that management console as well, for similar to how we had Nexenta Fusion. We have that way to manage it, to make it simple, being able to add it in with the ZeroStack platform, but then also being able to deploy as containers. And I think the thing that really combines for the two that we really need to touch on is it is software defined on it from both sides of it. So it really is your hardware and your choice on what you're going to do. You have, obviously, there's some testing that goes into it. Both of us have obviously done a good bit of testing on what the backends should look like, whether those servers have the right drivers, the right NICs, the right HBAs, all the things that are needed. And there's reference architectures around that from the Nexenta side to give you things that scale well into the petabyte range, but even the smaller ones, if you're just trying to build a smaller cloud for test dev or things like that. But you most likely can use those same servers, those same head nodes for both of our solutions. At this point, I think that flexibility and that freedom to say, you know what, I just need 7 of this server. Now you can use them for either one, really makes a difference when companies are trying to buy at scale. So as we do that, where would you say that most likely these are getting utilized?
So yeah, I mean, so we look at the use cases. So before I jump to the use cases, I think it's important to note that some of the original equipment manufacturers and hardware manufacturers we work with are the same as the ones that Nexenta works with. So Dell, the usual suspects: Dell, HP, Lenovo, Cisco, Supermicro, etc. We already support many of those vendors, certifications out of the box. We actually ship, I forgot to mention this earlier, we actually also ship an appliance. If customers want software only, that's perfectly fine with us. They can bring their own hardware and deploy it within their own data center. Or if they don't want to deal with hardware, no problems. They can just buy our appliance, which is pre-built, pre-integrated, to just buy the box and plug it in into their network, and off they go. So both of those options exist. So coming back to the use cases, we mentioned the two integrations. The NexentaStor really gives us the whole enterprise cloud for business applications. So you can take all of your critical apps that you're currently running on VMware or Microsoft, and those that you feel like are ready for, a new cloud solution or a new platform. So think of it as a modernization, an application and infrastructure modernization exercise. So you're getting a future-proof platform with both ZeroStack and Nexenta. It's ready for, as we said earlier, next generation apps. But you can get started on the journey, get started with enterprise cloud with your existing business applications. And of course, you can start building brand new cloud native apps right out of the box, because you're getting a complete software-defined cloud from the ground up with both Nexenta and ZeroStack. And I mean, I have to mention here, if you're doing OpenStack or CloudStack or vCloud or any of these other cloud solutions, ZeroStack has gone multiple steps ahead in terms of reducing the cost of complexity and reducing the silos and reducing the operational complexity to make it easy, right? So the whole idea is you don't have to deal with the complexity of OpenStack. You don't have to deal with managing all the drivers, all the integrations, all the operations that are associated with it, upgrading it every 6 months, doing backups, doing disaster, everything you need. I mean, this is what, in the traditional data center, all the ops stuff that you have to deal with, you don't have to worry about it anymore, because that's what ZeroStack does. Another thing is, if you're a managed service provider, and as a matter of fact, ZeroStack is seeing a lot of traction in the MSP space, where the MSPs want to leverage the cloud platform to go create cloud services for their customers, right? So especially in countries where there's no public cloud access, and where there's data locality and data governance issues or privacy issues, people do want the data to be in country, right? And that's where the local MSPs come in, and they provide these local cloud services. It looks like a public cloud, and for the MSP, they get lower CapEx, obviously lower OpEx. They don't have to deal with the VMware tax, and they get an operational platform that's ready to go from the ground up. And Mike, you want to add anything from the Nexenta side as far as use cases?
Yeah, I think on the MSPs is actually a good spot on that to touch on. Obviously, we have quite a few MSPs around the globe, probably 1,500 or so different MSPs, whether they're local or regional or national and growing on that. With that, I think some of the integration is they look at, a lot of them were built on VMware. They do have that cost. They've looked at OpenStack and have found it to be difficult at times. It does take a different skill set to be able to build it. So being able to add it in, and even for some of these existing customers of Nexenta that are running it, I know we're going to touch on this later, but ZeroStack really gives them an ability to roll in very easily as that on-ramp into the cloud, since they already have the Nexenta storage in place. So I think that's a great point to touch on right there. As far as the enterprise applications, obviously building them out, all those enterprise apps need that traditional storage in the back end, whether it's a file or block presentation, and you're able to get that integration very easily without having to be a challenge. And I think that's the big use case across all three of these, is it's making it easier for the end user. And where software-defined historically has been looked at as making things more difficult, our whole purpose is to not do that. It's to make it more flexible, more freedom, but make it simpler to use. And I think we can show that when we kind of compare this. So I'm going to let you kind of give me how do you think, are we comparing from ZeroStack and the Nexenta solution with some of those other players today?
Yeah, if you look at somebody like VMware, of course, has been the leader in virtualization. They have lots of different products. They have something called vCloud, which effectively gives you a cloud. I prefer to call that a cloud-inspired architecture, mainly because VMware brings a lot of different products together. Like NSX is their SDN solution. They have vRealize for operations. There's of course vCenter, and there's ESX. There's vSphere, and and so on and so forth. And if you really look at the end-to-end stack that's required to run a cloud, effectively what ZeroStack and Nexenta have converged into a very simple to operate platform, you need, at last count, I forget what the number is, something like 10 different products with different APIs, different licensing. Obviously, you have to pay for all of those, and bringing it all together, integrating them, paying for the license fees, upgrading them, is going to be a nightmare, to say the least, right? I mean, you're dealing with so many different components. With Nutanix, of course, they have the converged storage platform, but they don't have the self-healing capabilities and the machine learning and the SaaS-driven capabilities that ZeroStack is bringing to the table. And SDN, of course, is really part of what we do. We've built the platform with SDN from the ground up. And with the other vendors, it's something that they bolt on the side, or it's not complete. So you don't get that complete multi-tenant behavior from the ground up. So you can get it. It takes a lot of work, a lot of expense, maybe a lot of professional services, but it's not something you get out of the box. I think the most important thing I want to highlight is the operations piece. So again, going back to the original evolution, if you look at what's happening, the hardware costs are going down, Moore's law, more and more power and less costs. Software cost is kind of is also increasing, as I just mentioned, but the ops cost, especially at scale, has skyrocketed. And this is the reason why folks like Amazon and Azure and other public clouds have come into being, because ops is the hardest part. And that's 90% of your cost, especially when you're dealing with a cloud. And none of these other vendors that are able to provide those ops. And we like to call that we like to call that hyperconverged ops. So we're basically bringing hyperconverged infrastructure, hyperconverged operations, and basically a way for developers to have their own private workspaces, which gives you this entire platform. And when you get Nexenta in the picture, you get this enterprise-ready scale-out options, so you get very good storage on the back end as well. You want to add something to that, Mike?
No, I think you hit that well. I think on the one thing, the vCloud, you mentioned all the different pieces, and I came from a pretty heavy VMware background before on the storage side of things, and I've built multiple vClouds, and I will completely agree with that statement. I don't think I've ever built one in less than a week, and that's me knowing it and dealing with it, and then even building it in a week, that probably wasn't the ideal way to do it. So there is a lot of complexity there that gets added into it. I think you also do then when you look at Nutanix, so you lose some of the freedom. As we talked about some of the hardware vendors and some of the people we partnered with, whether you're pulling your appliance, you're pulling your software side of things, whether we're doing one of our appliances from Supermicro or Lenovo, or any of the software and the partnerships from the RAs, you get so much more freedom when you start with a software-defined section up front, and then adding in the pieces that you guys do on the networking and on the management and our side on the storage. So I think from there, it's really kind of what are those pieces, and as we kind of wrap through kind of the summary and kind of a little bit of a deep dive here, what can help and how's this play? So I know you mentioned the 90% lower OpEx, but there's obviously other pieces to that as well.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention was you said 1 week to get a vCloud up and running, and with somebody like an expert like you working on it. With us, no expertise needed, and the cloud can be up and running in as little as 30 minutes. It's all automated, right? Once it's up and running, so you bring your hardware, hook it up to the network. I will say the longest time any deployment takes is because the network isn't set up right in the first place, right? You don't have the right switches, it's not connected to the right port, whatever. That's that part, if it's done right, you plug it into the network, and after that we have something called Cloud Create, which takes no more than 30 minutes. And you got your cloud operating system up and running, you can log into your cloud and off you go, and you can start consuming the resources in there, including Nexenta resources, because that's automated. So it just shows up in the storage pools. As you select your storage pools, you can select Nexenta as your backend, and you can create your pools based on that. And then you get all the functionality that Nexenta gives you right out of the box. And of course, the portal is available to you. You can log in from anywhere. It's in the cloud, and you get those cloud-based monitoring that I just mentioned.
Yeah, I think you take that and being able to convert directly in. I mean, I mentioned it earlier for those existing customers. Being able to take that, do that cloud create on top of already existing storage and have that integration. It's so much quicker and so much easier.
So that's an important point too. So if you have existing investments in Nexenta storage, you can basically leverage that and reuse it within a cloud environment. So effectively, if you're looking to build a cloud and you have existing storage from Nexenta, it's very simple. Just plug it in and put ZeroStack there, and you get a cloud. And off you go. So you get the best of both the worlds. You get the best storage, and you get a advanced next generation cloud platform that feels like a public cloud, but you get the full control and security and data privacy of a private cloud.
So Steve, I think Kamesh and I have pretty much beat this horse to death here. That we've obviously got this partnership and on the best of breeds here.
Yeah.
So I will see what we got from you.
Well done.
At this point.
Yeah, well done, guys, and I couldn't agree more. I think it's abundantly obvious why we work together. We both help reduce the complexity that the customer sees. Obviously, the complexity is still there. We just manage it in different ways for them. I think you've done a great job of explaining where to start and how the integration works. I think one question always is, hey, I want to play first. I want to try before I buy. So can each of you just talk about how people can get their hands on the software and some kind of evaluation mode if that's available? And let's start with you, Kamesh, because I know you have an easy answer there.
Yeah, it's fairly straightforward with ZeroStack. We have what are called hosted POCs. All you need to do is reach out to us, and we will set up a hosted POC very quickly. You get a URL to log into. Effectively, you get a business unit within the ZeroStack environment, and that allows you to create virtual machines and storage devices and networks, and you can play around and even deploy apps and see how the whole environment works. And if you like that and you want to go forward and have a closer conversation with us, we are happy to engage and get an on-site POC if that's what you would like to do. It's fairly easy to see how the software operates.
Excellent. I think we actually call that a test drive now button on our website, big green button, in fact. How about you, Mike? How do you guys let customers access the software before they buy, or is that possible at all?
Yeah, the nice thing about being software is that we actually have a very similar, we have a try it now button. It's a pretty simple download. We do offer a 45-day trial of all of our software right off the website. You can go in and fill out a quick form just so we know who to ask later to make sure everything's going smooth, and you'll get access to the software. You can actually deploy it either directly on hardware or even in a VM. I know quite a few customers and people that have done the install and tried it out on their laptops or on their desktops as a VM to try the software and see what it looks like. So being able to do that very quickly, and it's normally that's a half-hour type setup. It's not a long process at all. And of course, if you don't want to install it yourself, there's obviously, you can just contact us at or send an email, and all of our guys can walk you right through a demo, or we even have the demos out on our YouTube site. So if you just want to see the interface, you can actually see a full little walkthrough. Unfortunately for everyone, I think it's my voice on the back end of the walkthrough, so they have to hear me. But you can mute it and just watch it if you want.
Mike, you sound just fine. I think that was the last question from the tools. So we could actually wrap this up with 10 minutes back to people's day, which might be the right thing to do. So they can go download both of our software sets and play for free and get those trials started. Why not, right, guys? Mike, really appreciate you guys helping get this webinar started. Thanks so much to your team, Don and the team over there at the corporate site. Kamesh, thanks so much from the ZeroStack side. Thanks so much to the audience. Any closing words, gentlemen?
It's a pleasure joining today. It was a great webinar, Mike. I think we had a good tag team here, and pleasure being part of this webinar. Thanks for organizing it. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Looking forward to hearing from all those people out there who've been able to watch it and see if we can get this software-defined cloud really moving forward.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll now shut down the webcast. Thanks so much. This will be available for replay, and I know everybody on the webcast will be getting a follow-up email. Thanks so much.